I was going to skip a bunch of this because it was what we did in the past couple videos where I put the Ricasso jig on here and drew it back with a 36 grit belt. I put it in ferric chloride so you can see the scratch marks. I got rid of the fire scale and all the other junk from the forge and the heat treating, and the edge has been brought down to around its final thickness. It'll get taken down here and there too with the higher grits we're going to go through, but for the most part that's about how thick I want it to be. There's a little bit of a hint of the Heyman coming through here. I don't know if the camera's going to make it out because I can barely make it out in person. But the ferric chloride is what we're going to use to finally bring that out, and for this part of the demonstration, I'm using it to show you where our scratches are. This is a really good technique for the finishing steps. It's going to help you get all your final gunks out. This is the 120 side. It's still pretty rough, but it's a hell of a lot better than this side, which is a 36 grit. And I took a break from grinding because as I was doing this side, I realized something that I probably should mention because it's one of those little things I do every day and I see it a million times and I don't think about it, and it's a really good tip. So I'm not going to be able to talk while I'm grinding. I have to prevent lung cancer and eye damage by wearing safety gear, and it's going to be really loud. I might dub over it to kind of give you an illustration of what's going on, but for the most part I'll give you a heads up for what to look for. When I reach off screen, I am putting my knife in a bucket of water, again to cool it off, and normally it's a good idea to wipe it off. These ceramic Firestorm belts are really awesome. They run pretty well wet. They don't clog up. This 120's already got a side in it. It's showing some wear, but it's going to work for the other side too. And the reason for the water is, yes, to keep it cool, but I use it as a reference guide. So I'll have that little bit of water gleaming on there. And as I go to grind, I'm going to try to not put my elbow in the shot. What I'm going to do is watch the water start to boil off. And the whole point of doing this at this stage, and also at the beginning, but it's less important because we normalize and do all the heat cycles properly to get rid of any kind of tempering issues. But right now I want it to stay exactly the way it is, and I don't want to heat it up any hotter than its original temper, or its final temper. So 200 degrees is the point where water's going to start to boil off, and I can pretty much gauge that through watching the water boil off my knife and keeping it moving along to a new spot that has water. I think through the same process that sweat keeps you cool, a little bit of water on the blade is going to help keep it cool. And again, you're going to see it start to heat up, so you just got to keep moving it along. And also, I'm not going to be wearing gloves. Huge reasons for that. A, I don't want to detemper my knife, and B, I think it's insanely stupid to grind on something like this with gloves, because I'm always putting my hands back here for a brace, and I catch myself wanting to stick my finger in these wheel spots, and they're super tight. I can't imagine how bad it would be if a loose piece of leather or something, even just, on a glove, would get caught in there. Break, let alone dismember your fingers. So I'm not going to be wearing gloves so I can feel it and I don't hurt myself. And like I said, I'm going to turn this off, get all set up, and it's going to be loud, so I will fix the volume for you. Don't worry about that. And you can just kind of watch me watch the water evaporate off of this until we get to a little bit more cleaned up, and then on to the next phase. We have the blade up to 220 now, and if I turn it just right, you can kind of start to make the Hayman out. Look, right there at the tip, and then it breaks up a little bit here. It's not going to be the straightest Hayman I've ever made, but to be honest, that's my first water quench doing a clay temper, so I'm pretty happy that it came out, period. I'll take some testing around to get it tighter, but for a first shot, I'm pretty happy with it. What I want to show you right now is that at 220 versus 120, and now this has a bunch of rust and gunk just from it coming in and out of the quench bucket on the grinder. But this area right here, let's zoom in on that. Our ricasso, this is with the jig. Very rough, and I'm trying to see if we can make it out. It's from the belts slipping underneath the guard. You'll get kind of like an uneven layered type section right there. And the way that we rectify that and bring it back just a little bit, make it nice and perfect and even and flat like that, is with a nice flexible 220 belt. I'll take a spin over to the grinder and show that to you, but just as I'm talking about it, what happens is I roll the belt off the edge of the plate so it's hanging over a little bit, and what that does is it rides up underneath here and trims all that nasty gunk off and levels it back. You got to keep an eye on it to run it back as far as you did on the first one. But a little bit of practice goes a long way on this technique. If you want to see the correct way to get a perfect ricasso, plunge cuts, whatever, this type of area here looking real good. If you want to see the best way to do that, check out Nick Wheeler's channel. He will give you a nice big slap of humility in how perfect his stuff is. This is the way that I do it. It works really well for me. It may or may not work well for you. There are 1,000,001 ways to make a good plunge cut. So I will walk over to the grinder and do this other side here so you guys can take a look at that. I have now a really lightweight A65 Norax belt on the machine. And that's, in my terms, a 200 grit belt. When they get up high, they stop measuring them in grit and start measuring them in microns. So, I really like these for the high grit belts because they are nice and flexible. And in the videos, you can see me running my fingers along here. And yeah, that'll cut you if you're not careful, but you can also kind of just feel how it pushes over to the side of that. And that is what we want. If you had a coarse grit belt, like the ceramic one, it would actually cut like a saw on the side. I couldn't do that on the red one, or I would be missing my fingertips. Alright, this one's nice and smooth and kind of got a little bit of a rounded effect to it, but it had more scratches up here than this side did. So what I'm going to have to do now is go back and drift the belt back over with the tracking to the other side and then keep that same angle again, and I'll probably work it all the way back up into this little area right here so it's nice and clean.